If this is not a part of why you want to be a physician, then yes, I agree. You don't need to throw it in there. Welcome to the OldPreMeds podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your host here every week, where I take questions directly from the non-traditional pre-med discussion over at premedforums.com. If you haven't been over there, go check it out. It's an amazing community of students, different than the Facebook group or anywhere else because it's just on my website. So it's a little bit more private, a little bit quieter over there, and a good place to ask your questions that will hopefully be answered here on the podcast. Today I have a question that is unfortunately a very common question that I get, especially from women when it comes around trauma and traumatic events. Now, I haven't read this one yet because I don't pre-read before I go into this, but just with the headline, the question headline of dealing with traumatic experiences, especially in interviews, it leads me to think about potentially the question that I get asked all the time is, as a woman or as a man, how do I talk about being sexually assaulted? So let's go ahead and jump into the question, and hopefully we'll get, I'll give you a good answer at the end. That's always my goal, good answers. So our student today says, hi, so this is a little weird, or a little hard rather, for me to discuss, but I know it's something that's going to come up if I'm fortunate enough to get an interview. And I've wanted to ask someone about this, but didn't know who or how, and I recently stumbled across this site. So I'm going to try because this seems like the best form I've come across. I am a 26-year-old female. I have a BS in mathematics, graduated when I was 22, but finished my math degree when I was 21 with a 3.46 GPA. When I was 19, after my freshman year, I watched one of my professors bleed to death with the rest of my class in another country. Okay, not the kind of trauma that I was expecting. Then, less than 9 months later, I was raped by a guy I would see for the next 3 years until he graduated and left. I went to school in a pretty small town, and he was part of my extended friend group. Okay, so there's the other trauma that unfortunately comes up a lot. Having witnessed the lives of other close friends get ripped apart when they reported sexual assault and not wanting to hurt my parents, it would wreck them. I never reported anything. For about a year after our professor's death, we were the pity of everyone who saw us, and it drove me crazy. My freshman year of college, I was in all sophomore classes, and I got straight A's, but then after all the above happened, I got straight B's and 2 C pluses, one of which was in microbiome because I had a class in the same building as the guy, and I didn't attend as much as I should for that reason. As soon as he left, also around the same time, I decided to take pre-med courses. I began getting good grades again, but not all of my pre-med courses are good grades. Most are, and OChem and biochem I got A's in. Great job. This was a trend I noticed in the last year or two since looking back on my life and experiences. I think I was a bit depressed, expected, and withdrawn, expected from everything. I focused on rock and ice climbing as a form of therapy, but now I'm fine. Since there's a clear trend in my undergraduate grades, I'm expecting to be asked about it, but I have absolutely no idea how to respond without coming off as a delicate flower or unstable or something. I'm not delicate or unstable, obviously not. You've done amazing things with your life, and I'm very level-headed and logical, but my reactions as an early 20-something may make an interviewer think otherwise. What happened was pretty much out of my control, obviously, but it's been affecting my life since the day both things happened. I don't intend to write about any of this in my personal statement or mention anything before an interview, since while it's something that has happened and it's part of me, it's not what defines me. Great. Any advice? So I have tons of advice, but most of it obviously is still focused around how do you deal with this, right? If this comes up, the question of what happened in your earlier grades, why do you have such an upward trend? Where did you struggle earlier? I think there are lots of avenues and angles that any student can take when it comes to dealing with red flags. And this is whether or not you dealt with a traumatic event that you don't want to talk about, or really anything in your life that maybe you don't want to talk about. Maybe you had some addiction issues and you struggle. That's another common thing that comes up a lot. Maybe whatever the situation is, right? Students from all backgrounds, all walks of life have had traumatic events that have affected their grades. So what happens is if this is not a part of why you want to be a physician, then yes, I agree. You don't need to throw it in there. A 3.46 GPA is not a bad GPA. Having a good upward trend is great. I think that is okay, that you don't need to throw in and say, oh, like in your personal statement, typically I talk about a red flag kind of statement to say, like, you may see in my grades, right? Not literally say that, but you may see in my grades that I struggled here, and here's potentially why. You don't necessarily have to say that. So if you don't say it in your personal statement or anywhere else in your secondaries, or for like TMDSAS essay for the optional essay, anything else you want us to know, secondary essays, anything else you want us to know, if you don't want it anywhere on your application there, it still may come up in an interview for the interviewer to say, hey, what happened with your grades here? Especially if it's an open interview where they can see your grades and your trends and everything else. With that said, you can do a few things. You can just say, I had a lot of stuff going on in my life then, and I wasn't as able to handle it then as I am now. Right? Just a simple statement. You don't have to get personal about it. You don't have to get specific about it. And hopefully the interviewer will take a clue, right? Because most of us are very empathetic people. We can see that the person we're interviewing is potentially a little bit shy about talking about that subject. And if it's not a huge issue, they hopefully won't push it to go, oh, like, what stuff were you dealing with, right? That's just something that most probably won't go down. And if they do go down that path, then you say, well, actually, it's some personal stuff that I'm not very comfortable talking about, but it's been dealt with. It's not an issue. That part of my life is over. And I'm just really excited that I took a lot of lessons from that time, and I've shown that I've been able to rebound, right? You just talk about as much as possible that not an issue, not going to be an issue in the future. It's over with, not a problem. And really almost everything when it comes to an interview and an application, wherever it else may be, the goal is always, what did you learn? What did you take away from that situation? The more that you can do that, the better you'll be without really necessarily going into all of those details. So hopefully that was helpful for you. I am very, very encouraged by the journey that you've taken. I'm very glad that you have gone down this path now, that you have found your strength, that you have found your voice, and that you are applying to medical school. So good luck to you. And to everyone else going through similar struggles, know that you are not alone. At the very least, go post on the pre-med forums just to get it out of your head and out there. It's completely anonymous as much as you want it to be. So I wish you all the best, and we'll see you next time here on the Old Pre-Meds podcast.